Fran McCaffery is the new head coach of the Iowa Hawkeye basketball team, so we're going to talk about the new hire, and we're also going to talk about the Final Four games this weekend. This is Incompetent Sports Talk. Welcome to another edition of Incompetent Sports Talk, along with Mike Rabin and Joel Loprena. I'm Alex Salzma, and yes, take a look at the shirt. Fran is our man. The Iowa Hawkeyes officially hired a new basketball coach, and Fran McCaffery is the hire. I think, first of all, I'll just start off by talking about this. I think it's a great hire. I mean, you take a look at what he's done at 3 different programs, rebuilding them, not inheriting good programs, but then turning them into winners. You saw what he did at Lehigh as one of the youngest coaches in college basketball. UNC Greensboro, another successful stop with him, took them to the NCAA tournament. And then I think the one that jumps out the most, the job that he's done at Siena, taking them to 3 consecutive NCAA tournaments in those 3 years, averaging over 70 points a game. And then, of course, upsetting 2 good teams in the process, beating a Vanderbilt team 3 years ago by over 20 points, and then beating Ohio State last year. And then this year coming pretty close to taking on Purdue and then beating them. But I think it's a great hire. You know, I think, too, he's going to bring a different style of basketball, which is something refreshing. And I think that's probably the overarching theme that I think is going to carry on throughout this process. It's just a breath of fresh air, which I think is what some people wanted. It's it might bring more fans into the arena, and that's what his mission is, is he said, to make Carver a place where, teams come in, they have no chance to win. So, and then, you mix his experience as a head coach, what he's done as an assistant under 2 great coaches, John McLeod and Digger Phelps at Notre Dame for 11 years. He knows what it's like to recruit at a big school because he recruited the Midwest there. So, even though a lot of people might not know who Fran McCaffery is, I think people certainly know what he's done at Siena, and I think it's going to be a good hire. Mike, what's your take on this hire?
Yeah, I agree with your sentiments. I mean, my phrase is cautious optimism. He's a good coach. Like you said, he's proven a lot of things at small schools, but the 2 big questions that we have to ask ourselves as Iowa fans is, can he recruit in the Big Ten, and can he bring fans back to the stands and bring excitement? With regard to recruiting, he said, the first thing I'm going to do here at Iowa is re-recruit the players that are already here. And so that's a sign to me that he's really got a personal relationship with players and that he wants to be personal. And that's huge and goes a long way in recruiting. Now, with regard to excitement and putting fans in the stands, as you said, he plays an up-tempo style of basketball. There's pressure on defense, which is very different from Todd Licklider. So I think what Iowa fans are going to have to also come to realize is they have to reconcile their poor memories of Todd Licklider, a mid-major national coach of the year, with the fact that a lot of mid-major coaches, get their start at a big-time school, and that's where they do well. And Fran McCaffery, this is his big chance to get that opportunity.
And, and Jordan, he's turned down a lot of offers. I mean, he was in the mix last week for 2 other jobs. St. John's was ultimately went to Steve Lavin. We'll talk about that later. And then, of course, at Seton Hall, he was their number 1 guy.
Yeah, and on Monday's press conference, he mentioned that he was leaving a place he loved. He could have very well stayed in that area, as you mentioned, at St. John's or Seton Hall, and he didn't. He came to Iowa. You can tell, he said he wanted to be the coach at Iowa. When talking to Gary Barta, he said that, Fran said that he was told, this is different. We need a coach that can come in here and win, change things up. And it was just a refreshing day for Iowa basketball, to get a new face in there. Best of luck to Todd Licklider, but in all reality, this was a refreshing hire, a good hire. I love, there doesn't seem anything wrong as far as like family values, stuff like that. That's all there with this guy. And what I like is how focused he sounds on basketball, 1, getting Carver to be electric again, 2, and, just what you alluded to is re-recruiting the players he has. That was the one thing I didn't really like when Coach Licklider took over here, is that, there were players just, it was a mass exodus every year, players just leaving, and Coach Licklider didn't seem like he was doing much to retain them. He kind of wanted guys that could play his system, whereas Coach McCaffery looks like he's going to, try and adapt his system to the guys he has here, and I really like that. And I like that he's also going after the players that had signed letters of intent that Coach Licklider was recruiting.
And Mike, you talked about Coach McCaffery said he has to re-recruit the players that are here, but I think he also, and he understands that he has to re-recruit the fans, because a lot of the fans have become disenchanted and just disinterested in Iowa basketball. And it's something that's sad to see. Gary Barta made it obvious when he fired Coach Licklider that was one of the main reasons, because fans weren't coming back to Carver. So I think he's going to do a good job, though, of trying to bring fans back. He understands he's going to have to sell the program again, and that's something important, too. And also, one of the things with McCaffery is that, what he's done, his style of basketball, as we talked about, I think is important, too. And any last thoughts, guys, before we move on?
I think one interesting debate that happened during this process is, there were other guys in the mix, Gregory at Dayton, who's now in the championship game of the NIT, and Steve Forbes at Tennessee. It'll be interesting to see if these things come out in the future, if Barta looked at these guys intently, because, we heard Steve Forbes say, Iowa is my dream job. And so this is nothing against the McCaffery pick, but it's interesting I want to kind of see what comes out of these other guys, to see maybe why we didn't wait for them or push further on those guys.
Mm-hmm. And I think, too, if you look at the resume of McCaffery, I think it's a slam dunk hire. And now, obviously, a lot of people had really lofty expectations about wanting to get someone like Bruce Pearl, but it wasn't going to happen. Bruce Pearl wasn't leaving Tennessee, and if he was, we would have had to pay him more than we probably would have paid Kirk Ferentz. I mean, it wasn't going to happen. So I think if you're taking a look at who was the best possible mid-major coach out there we could have got, I think if you make a list of the best ones in the country, he's probably one of the top 3 or 4 of the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, what he's done at Siena, the rebuilding job. But I mean, the year before he took over Siena, they only won 6 basketball games. And now what they've done the last 3 years, I think it's a tremendous turnaround. And I think they wanted a guy who could turn around a program, and he's done it 3 times. And I think that's what's maybe going to go a long way helping him in the future.
Yeah, I really like, you bring up that rebuilding aspect that McCaffery has. You look at what he's done at Siena. It's not like he just took a team from the garbage to middle of the road and kept him competitive. He took a team from the dumps and got them. They've been the MAAC. Got that right. the MAAC regular season and tournament champions each of the last 3 years, and that's very impressive that his teams have been that dominant in that conference now for 3 years. The big tournament wins over Vanderbilt and Ohio State, losing to a Purdue squad that was a Sweet 16 team. So you look at that, and I think he has some impressive credentials. Now I know so did Coach Licklider. He's the National Coach of the Year when he brought him in. But nonetheless, I just like the hire. I like the up-tempo pace that you guys will be seeing inside Carver Hawkeye Arena.
Yeah, and you know about Coach Licklider, and I really wish him all the best. I mean, there's no ill will between us. I mean, it's tough to have to fire a coach. I mean, he comes in here 3 years ago, and it's not the way we wanted to see it end. Obviously, we would have loved to have seen him succeed. We would have loved to have seen him be the coach here for 20 years. I mean, we would have loved it, but the fact is it just didn't happen. And, if you lose that many games, then you probably had a feeling that was maybe going to happen. And with all the players leaving, the fans leaving, I guess it probably wasn't really surprised that it was going to end up that way. But really, I know we've talked about this before. His name might be in the mix for the Toledo job, maybe some other mid-major jobs. I really hope he gets another job and succeeds again, because I think he's a great guy, and I still think he's a good coach.